Your personal reputation can have a major impact in your hiring process. Let's discuss. Hey, before we get started, listen, we have gifts down in the description for you. We've updated some things in them, so jump on there. First, the Getting Started workshop is going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process. Plus, there's some hidden bonuses in there. One of them being a police candidate eligibility exam to see where you fall as a candidate. Just because you score low doesn't mean you can't get hired. Just because you score high doesn't mean you will get hired. Additionally, we have the free coaching call with myself or any of our other instructors to add additional times to make it more available to everyone out there. Now, what does it look like with your personal reputation going through the hiring process? Your personal reputation can have multiple implications, both positive and negative, right? So let's start with the positive first. If I were to call your employer, right? Say I'm wrapping it up, even though you told me, hey, please don't contact my employer till the end. If I were to contact your employer and say, hey, this is officer or recruiter or department so and so calling about Frank Magaha. I'm looking to get some more information on him and see, what you think of him as an employee. If they say something along the lines of, man, I hate to hear that. I hate to know that Frank's thinking about leaving. He's a good employee and he's always here on time, always doing what he needs to. That's going to hurt our organization to have him go. That, even though they are saying that it's a negative, right? They're saying they don't want me to leave. That's a positive in that department's mindset and in their site, right? So opposed to the negative connotation that an employer could say where it says, well, I can tell you this about Frank. He doesn't always show up on time. He calls out all the time and he's been reprimanded a few times. That is not going to look so good, right? That's a personal/professional reputation that I don't necessarily want to have. Now, a lot of departments will say, or supervisors will say, hey, unfortunately, I can't comment. That has to go through our HR department. And these are organizations with kind of robust legal teams, and they say, hey, HR will say, we can comment on this. Frank has worked here from these dates to this date, and he's still currently employed, or he's no longer currently employed, or whatever. Now, that's a lot of legal stuff that you'll hear departments saying. That's more neutral, and there's not much that a background investigator or a hiring official can get out of that department. But if you were to get a positive, hey, we love him here, we really don't want to lose him, or then a negative, hey, yeah, he's not our most reliable individual. Either one of them can have a significant impact. But what about other personal aspects? What about other personal characteristics that could have an impact on you? One of these, and I'm going to do a whole separate video on this, are the handles or the names that you use out in the internet, out in the ether, right? Out on social media. If you have unprofessional social media handles, right? Something referring to sexually explicit things or anything referring to improper conduct, Street Racer 1234 or the Ultimate Street Racer. That's not a good ideal name to have. And while you may have had that social media since you were a kid, you're looking at getting into a very public and very professional organization at this point in time. An emphasis on public, because let me be clear about this. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. You're a public servant. We serve the public. Without the public, there's no law enforcement, right? You can sit here and argue it the other way around. You say, well, without law enforcement, the public would just be a free-for-all. I promise you, it's completely 100% the opposite. Without the public, there's no one to serve, right? It's a free-for-all anyway. So understand that when you say, well, why do they need to know all this about me? You're not applying to a job that is just for a private organization. You're applying to a public government position. Government position is open to all manners of scrutiny from the public, right? So a department doesn't want to hire you if you have some type of negative personal character trait, such as, the best street racer or never caught street racer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. as your as your social media or your email. That's another. Your emails tell so much about you. Now, a lot of times you'll see someone's name with their date of birth. Perfectly fine, perfectly professional. And when I say date of birth, I mean the year they were born. But when you get into this, the real OG at gmail.com, the real OG 12345 at gmail.com, not what you want to be using to submit to your department. And what do you do with all that? Because they're going to ask you, hey, list any social media you ever had. Please list all emails you've ever had, whether active or inactive, right? They're going to ask you because it's telling. It's a personal characteristic that we get to use to help determine where you fall as a candidate, your personal characteristic. A lot of time, individuals don't get DQ'd in their background for a single incident. They get disqualified due to their character does not meet the quality that the department is looking for. And so where someone says, oh, I was DQ'd for my speeding ticket this year. No, that's not the case. You were DQ'd because you got a speeding ticket every year or two a year for the last 10 years. And we build that character reference of you by reviewing all that. You really want to take the time to go through all this. And even if you go through, I am not telling you to go in and delete all your social media in preparation for applying or going through the police hiring process. But what I will tell you is you do need to look and see what type of public characteristics you want to portray as a public professional, because that's what you're getting into. You're a public professional, right? You're going to be operating in the public, as I mentioned before. So if you want to go in and say, you know what, this doesn't represent me anymore, the best street racer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or the Philly street racer 1, 2, 3 doesn't really represent me, then I think at that point in time, it's best to get rid of it and maybe start a new one. And it's time to reinvent yourself and reinvent yourself into the professional. And if you don't want to do that, really consider, is this the profession I want to get into? Do I really want to be in the public side? Because when you put that uniform on, right, or not even if say you're in investigations, or say you're a special agent, when you put that suit on and you put that badge on your belt or in your neck, or you put those credentials in your back wallet and you're working in the capacity of what you're doing, it's public. 100% public, with the exception of, some undercover work, which, by the way, all that gets released to the public and is open to the public for the majority of it anyway. You need to take into consideration that that's the profession you're looking for. And while some people might say, no, that people don't need to know my whole life. This is a job. You have the wrong mindset. In my personal opinion, and professional opinion, you have the wrong mindset on that. You need the mindset of, hey, I'm applying to a government position where public scrutiny is a requirement, because it keeps the checks and balances of the organization honest and integrity. You should never fear what the public has, or the public's wanting to view your department or you individually, because you should always maintain that level of professionalism. Now, in your personal life, that's completely different. If you want to have another social media for just friends and family, that's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But make that one private, right? Keep that one private and don't post anything about your profession on it. And then have a public one where you can post, professional comments or interact with the public. That's kind of where I would go with it. But you don't really need that right now until you get into law enforcement. What you really need is to go through your social media, go through your email, go through your public persona, and see what your reputation says about you. See what's out there. How do your references refer to you, right? How are they going to explain you? That's why picking references is a really important task, right? If you go through and you say, hey, I'm going to go through with what I have, and you get DQ'd for it, or you get not selected, this is one of the few things you can actually control. Once again, not telling you to say, hey, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to delete or deactivate all my social media why I'm going through the hiring process and then reactivate it. No, that is not what I'm saying. Right. I'm telling you is it's time to, if you need to, it's time to maybe start looking at your professional reputation and see what it conveys. And then that way, when they ask you about these, what's this old, you know, Facebook or YouTube or Instagram name that you had, username that you used to have, Street Racer 12345. Oh, that's from when I was a kid. It was before I even had a driver's license. I like to, play video games, street racing video games. And that's what I named everything. Perfectly reasonable explanation, right? They're still going to ask about it, but you're going to say, hey, I haven't used it. And that's a super old email. And it's so unprofessional. I stopped using it years ago, or I stopped using it a while ago when I decided, all right, I'm older. I'm looking to get into a more professional career. I'm looking to get into law enforcement. I don't need to have these younger, immature names. So keep that in mind, right? There's a lot of things to consider on this. And once again, if you have these names, it's not the end of the world, right? It's definitely not the end of the world. And I'm not coming down on you. I'm just saying is start thinking about what your public reputation says to these hiring officials. Start thinking about what your search history says to these hiring officials. Start thinking about what your email, what your references, what everything that is out there about you start saying. And your public reputation doesn't just stop at the things you create. It goes into your credit history, right? Oh, and I'll hear this in the comments all the time. Why does credit history matter? Well, it's not necessarily if you have a low credit score or you don't have any credit history, that's so easy to articulate. Hey, I don't use credit cards. I make sure I live within my financial means. I have a debit card for my bank, and that's about it. I really don't rely on credit. As a background investigator, they'll just say, hey, understandable, reasonable. I can see that. That's what your financial history says or your credit history says. Great. The reason that we look at your credit report and not your credit score just gives us a quick glimpse and tells us if we want to dive deeper. But the reason we look at your credit report is because if we see late payments, sent to collection, missing, 30 days neglected, 90 days neglected, right? And we see all these marks on it, then we know that you're not an individual that honors their commitments, right? And once again, here we go. I've heard all these arguments before. Oh, well, maybe you fell into some financial hardships. That's great. You can articulate that for a one-off time. Yeah, hey, there was a financial hardship during the COVID-19 era where, I lost my job or some and such happened. And I had to defer payments on these, but ultimately I'm caught up now. And, I'm just waiting for these remarks to come off my credit report. Okay, reasonable. I understand something like that. But then I see 5 years of history of this or something in collections every year for the last 5 years, and you just say, oh, yeah, well, then we think you mismanage your finances, right? And financial is one of the core four we look into, right, when it comes to your background. And if we feel that you're mismanaging or you cannot meet your financial obligations, what makes us think that you'll meet other obligations, such as, showing up to work on time? Right? Making sure you train properly with your defensive equipment, your duty firearm, making sure you maintain your mental health, your physical health, and even your financial health so that you can't be bribed or corrupted in any manner, right? Those are all, now that's to the extreme, but those are all things to consider in evaluating a person's financial reputation, which is also a part of your public reputation, right? Because it's reported to these credit bureaus. There's a lot here that goes into this. So my suggestion and my tips moving forward on this one is look at all your usernames, look at all your emails. Maybe it's time to update them. Maybe it's time to look to see what photos are out there of you. Maybe it's time to look to see what is going on in your public image and your public reputation. Start looking at doing a scrub. And it's not to hide anything. That's not the goal here. Right? The goal is to say, hey, it's time for me to present myself in a mature, professional manner. And that's what you need to work on. Listen, those gifts are still in the description. Use them. I highly recommend it. First one being the Getting Started workshop. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process, give you those inside tips. But we have those hidden bonuses in there. The new one being that police eligibility exam. Take it. See where you fall. See if you have some major hurdles that might slow down your hiring process. A lot of times when people reach out to me, a lot of times I can tell them, hey, where are you at with these questions? And I can determine how hard it's going to be for them to get through the hiring process. The next one, free coaching call with myself or any of the other instructors. We're bringing on even more instructors for you guys, just so that you have more availability. A lot of people reaching out saying there wasn't times available with me. My instructors are just as knowledgeable as I am. Jump on a call with them. Jump on a call with me if you have or if you find my availability. Be glad to sit down and talk with you. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.